Welcome to AM Best Audio.
Professor Olivia Mitchell is the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans professor and a leading economist at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where she also serves as executive director of the Pension Research Council and director of the Bettner Center for Pensions and Retirement Research. A distinguished fellow of the American Economic Association, she's published extensively on pensions, insurance, financial literacy, household finance, public finance, and retirement behavior. Her research addresses pressing challenges in retirement security and financial decision-making across the life cycle. Professor Mitchell, so glad you could join us today.
It's my great pleasure.
So, Professor, what led you to investigate financial regret and longevity among older Americans?
I have been interested in retirement security my entire career. And I got started looking at financial literacy, what people knew or didn't know about the financial decisions that were so important to them in retirement. And then I started to understand that people really didn't understand longevity risk. That is, they kind of had a decent idea about their life expectancy, which is, the average. But they didn't understand there was a far right tail. They might actually survive a very long time. And so when I started looking at this question as to why people didn't annuitize, why they didn't protect themselves against living a very long time, I thought, well, maybe they just don't understand the concept of longevity. And in fact, it turns out that's actually the case. Regret comes up because we found in this study that if you explain to people how long they actually might live, then they think, gee, I should have bought life annuities. I should have delayed claiming Social Security. I should have made very different financial decisions.
How does the concept of longevity awareness differ from traditional measures of retirement planning or risk perception in your study?
Well, longevity awareness refers to the possibility that people might live a very long time. And if they understand that, they're going to try to save more, work longer, insure against living too long. Typically, a lot of financial advisors, even retirement calculators online, will say, what's your age? What's your sex? Boom, you have 7.8 years more to live. And of course, that's not the way the distribution of longevity actually works. So ultimately, informing people about their longevity risk is absolutely essential to get them to be more secure in retirement and take the right steps.
Now, Professor, your findings show variation in regret across demographic groups. What do you see as the primary drivers of these differences in financial regret?
Well, so what we did find is that over half of older Americans regret not saving more for retirement. A third regret not purchasing long-term care insurance. And over a third regretted not working longer. Those are just some of the examples that we found. The higher level of regret, the highest levels were concentrated among women who actually do live a long time on average, and other vulnerable subpopulations like Black respondents and those with lower wealth. And so it does seem like those are the target populations where it would be most important to educate them about longevity risk.
To what extent did objective information about survival probability change participants' thinking about their retirement or insurance decisions?
As it turned out, providing people with objective information had very little impact on their behavior. But when we ask them subjective survival probabilities, like what are the chances that you might live to age 90 or age 95, that actually made them much more aware of the fact that they were exposed to these risks and the fact that they needed to purchase lifetime income.
So, Professor Mitchell, can you explain how regret regarding long-term care or longevity protection might inform future design of retirement products or policy incentives?
Well, it's my belief that if financial advisors were able to explain to their clients, and if employers were able to explain to their employees the fact that they have a severe risk of outliving their life expectancy, that would get them to be more likely to save for retirement, to annuitize, and potentially to buy long term care insurance. However, the long term care insurance market, as you know, has not been that robust in the US of late. So, actually, a separate project I'm working on is trying to design enhanced annuities, which will, where if you're healthy, you'll get one level of payoff. And if you have, say, two limitations of activities of daily living, then the payout would go up. So it's a form of long-term care insurance.
Interesting concept. So, what implications do your results have for financial literacy programs aimed at older adults, especially those nearing or in retirement?
Well, clearly, I've done a number of studies on financial literacy in the US as well as 2 dozen other countries. And most Americans are woefully underinformed about basic facts. I believe that you need to start early. You need to start in high school to start to educate people about the financial decisions they're going to be making. And then at each stage over the life cycle, it's important to find age appropriate topics to dwell on. So, for example, kids in high school are going to be focusing on student loans, getting a credit card. People a little bit later on think about saving for retirement. And particularly at the point when you get serious about considering retirement, that's the time to educate employees or financial advisees about the longevity risk that they're exposed to.
Customize your data experience. BestLink now offers an interactive company dashboard that provides company-level intelligence in a fast, user-friendly interface featuring interactive tables, charts, and Sparkline performance histories. Customize the dashboard tiles to prioritize the insurer ratings, data, and analytics that best support your workflow. AM Best. Our insight, your advantage.
So, in your view, Professor Mitchell, how might employers, policymakers, or financial institutions use insights from this study to improve retirement preparedness?
Well, interestingly, something like 22 US states now mandate financial literacy in high school. You have to take and pass a class. So that would be something where it would be useful to inject longevity information as well. We've all done the problems where the train leaves from Chicago and leaves from New York, and when will they crash? That's fine, but I think it would be much more material, much more meaningful to explain to people the risk of outliving your money. And it's a very big number, especially if you're at least a high school graduate and an average income earner.
What are the potential behavioral or cognitive barriers that cause individuals to underweight longevity risk when planning for retirement?
That's a tough one. No one really likes to think about when they're going to die. And those questions are difficult. But some of the questions we asked were, did you know, according to statistics, out of 100 people, your age and sex, we tailored it based on their sex, will live at least 20 years more on average, or 15, depending on their age and sex. And people are willing to think about live longer. What they're not willing to do is talk about how long before you die. So you have to frame the questions in such a way that people are willing to listen. And just like the way that we sell life insurance, which is really death insurance, of course, but that's a way of making it a more delicate topic and a more desirable product.
So how do your findings relate to broader trends in retirement behaviors? Things like claiming Social Security benefits or annuitization patterns?
Well, I've been working recently on efforts to try to include what I call pretty good annuities, default payout lifetime income in defined contribution plans. Those are not the norm now, right? Typically in defined contribution plans, you get your sum of money and you can roll it over, you can pay yourself a little bit each month, but it's not the default that most employers include in the payouts. And I think it's important not only to educate employees about lifetime income options, but also to make it easy for them to access the annuity within their retirement plan. In terms of Social Security claiming, we know that Social Security is facing insolvency within about 6 years. And one of the possible reactions that people might engage in is to claim early because, gee, at least I'll get my money. But the reality is every year you delay claiming between 62 and 70, your benefits go up by about 8% a year, 7 to 8% a year. So if you're thinking, well, the government might run short of money, what you should do is try to delay as long as possible. So if there's a cut, it's on a higher base. So these are some of the things that we really need to educate people.
Finally, Professor Mitchell, looking ahead, what key questions about aging, financial decision-making, or longevity risk remain unanswered and most critical for future research?
Well, that's the rest of my career. I think that financial literacy, people in facing retirement and going into retirement are making some of the most consequential financial decisions that they'll ever make. When to claim Social Security is enormously important. Can you delay until 70, which is when you get the maximum lifetime benefit? And other issues like how to educate people around medical care costs that they're going to be facing. To me, that's one of the largest and most uncertain risks that we face as we look into retirement. So there's a lot to do, both in terms of financial literacy and longevity literacy. And I'm eager to keep pushing in that direction.
A lot to talk about. Professor Mitchell, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure, sir.
That was Professor Olivia Mitchell, Executive Director of the Pension Research Council and Director of the Bettner Center on Pensions and Retirement Research. And I'm John Weber for AM Best TV.
Looking to get the full attention of the insurance industry? We have the platforms that will do just that. Whether it be AM Best TV, AM Best Audio, Best Review Magazine, or Best Day. Find out more by calling AM Best Advertising Sales at 908-439-2200, extension 5399, and have a great day.